With Season 7 coming to a close and the electrifying Season 8 starting in just under 2 days, how well did Season 7 achieve its goals when it came to being a good update and what fans have been asking for? Well, from gleaning the comments and other social media, Season 7 has been quite controversial. For the record, I have largely enjoyed my time with Season 7, but it did not really change the way I played or interacted with Sea of Thieves. So let's discuss why Season 7 was a controversial update. Season 7's main focus was ship captaincy, a new system in which players could finally own their own ships as a captain. This included naming, saving cosmetics, and deeper customization options. It also included a new progression system called milestones. These were essentially long-form progress trackers for actions like catching fish, selling loot, or even sleeping. I think fans were generally frustrated with these two aspects, but for different reasons. Regarding the new customization options, this was limited by the majority of cabin decorations being only usable on the galleon. As Sea of Thieves has grown, so has its demographic. With smaller ships being more common on the seas, it's quite rare to have a galleon on a server compared to brigantines or sloops. So right off the bat, this was immediately disheartening as most players could not take full control of this. It really is a shame, as when cabins are decorated correctly, they can be spellbinding and really tie a ship together. On the other hand, only a select few models were available at launch, with lots of sets missing. 4 months later, we are only getting 2 more sets of these, and they're both simple recolours. This was taken further by the trinket system, but again, smaller ships really were limited in comparison. Look at the complexity and sheer customization options available when comparing a galleon to a sloop or brig. Then trinkets sort of have a different issue. The last ones in a set require such a monumental grind where players would have to put in hundreds of hours for lots of them, so the reward doesn't match with the tedium. And both of these elements were damaged by saving cosmetics being broken for nearly 2 months after launch. Players would often come back to trinkets being missing or parts of the livery not being there. To make things worse, it's quite expensive to save these cosmetics, and this was a much anticipated feature for many. It's a huge roleplay aspect of the game, or even simply a time saver. This brings me on to the milestones. As we've seen from Season 8, the milestones being added are for actions that won't be rewarded before the update. Season 7's milestones were mostly like that, but the ones that were new just involved sleeping, sitting, drinking, and playing shanties. The others were passive actions like turning in loot or completing voyages. There are lots of instances where crossovers happen with commendations too. Essentially, the main complaint for milestones is that they did not encourage different gameplay to what most had been doing for the 4 years prior, or even it forced a lot of players to repeat old grinds like fishing or gold hoarder voyages. Rare did nerf the requirements for these shortly into Season 7, which was the right thing to do, and made the system so much more accessible for all players. I will say this though, I know a few people who really care about milestones, but I only do as much as the captaincy decorations go. Season 7 is a clear point in which adventures went from something fans generally liked to something with a more mixed reception. For me, new adventures coming out each month will always get me to log on. I love the story, despite the writing taking a bit of a hit due to adventures. I still am excited to see how the story continues though. On the other hand, the Hunter's Cry opened up a can of worms. I believe this was the turning point when lots of people began to feel discontent about the adventures. If you missed it, the Hunter's Cry was a shared adventure, in which multiple crews would be put into an instant session in the Sea of the Damned. Think A Pirate's Life Tales number 1 and 3. But PvP was turned on, with some deliberately going out of their way to ruin other people's experiences, or just communication breaking down and evolving into chaos. Rare put too much trust in the community for this one, and like we all predicted, this led to lots of people having countless issues. It overall soured a sound experience, with the emotional gravity being lost with people griefing, or a pirate crab dabbing during the final cutscene. The Siren's Prize came next and is one of my favourite adventures. Lots of complaints rang out about a repeat of Season 4 content with a Veil module at the end. In all honesty, they weren't wrong. There were also complaints about people being sunk while down at the shrines. It happened to us, but luckily we didn't lose any progress. I think the Siren's Prize was really good when stacked up against all the adventures, but wasn't the strongest outing when it came to renewing faith in the story for most players. Then we have arguably the most controversial adventure so far, the Herald of the Flame. Herald of the Flame is the second adventure which really felt like it should be a tall tale, with Shrouded Deep being the other. It was a long-awaited return of Stitcher Jim. We'd all been waiting for 2.5 years for this payoff, but did it really come through? Yes and no. It did a great job of refreshing us and reintroducing Jim, but suffered from the same sticking points of adventures. There was just not enough new stuff to make it feel completely realised. But no one can argue the ending was not infuriating. It boiled down to the good guys about to lose, then winning, and then not winning. It would have been so much more cohesive to have the protagonists fail. From a personal perspective, my main gripe was the easy boss fight at the end, which finished in 2 minutes for us. Having a new fight completely was out of the question given the scope of adventures. I'll briefly say this about Return of the Damned, the only real criticism I have is that the choice was not as controversial as Lost Sands. Flameheart's build-up has been stretched to breaking point and made this an easy win for him. It really said something that Rare never revealed the percentages for this one, not even at the end. Athena must have been so embarrassingly crushed. I'm happy about it, and seeing the fruits of a 5-year tease delivered by the fans makes it that much sweeter. On the other hand, Season 7 has a bunch of strong points. Now that saving cosmetics does work, it's a really nice moment visiting your ship at the docks. Syncing people for ship logs and seeing what they've been up to still doesn't get old, nor does spying a captained vessel in the distance. It helped bring some of my own personal ships to life too, something I've wanted since launch and many of you have also. It still feels like a treat to see the nameplate filled in after 4 years or so. The decorations and trinkets all do look beautiful, with the paintings being a particular standout. And for lots of players, having passive progression always on adds another layer of depth to reward them for their time. The Sovereigns had turned out to be a good addition for captains as well. Not that I like to sell to those scum. It took a lot of the tedium out of the most mundane part of the game, and many players are thankful for that. They also act as a looming threat while the pirates begin infighting in the Sea of Thieves, conflict that will inevitably evolve over the next year or so. I would even argue that Arc 3 has been the strongest so far in terms of adventures. If you compare it to Shrouded Islands and Merrick's Arc, it's easily better in my book. Because of it, we got lots of lore and some massive bombs dropped. The Ancients got fleshed out with a mystery solved as to where they disappeared to. Jim was brought back and finished his transition into an Ashen Lord. Rare even increased his importance by making a part of the prophecy. Return of the Damned was a marked improvement on Lost Sands. The gameplay was much more engaging, it added new mechanics again, and it was a fairer fight, as both sides had the same activities to score points. This arc also closed out the 3rd or 4th plotline about resurrecting Captain Flameheart, with the community deciding they want him back. God, I would not be praising the arc so much with that emotional payoff. It would be too much flip-flopping for me. And to Rare's credit, they did say Captaincy would be an ever-expanding part of the game. Lo and behold, Season 8 adds new cosmetics and alignments building on Season 7. I really do think Season 7 would be an all-round fan favourite if it wasn't for the delays. It did upset the momentum of Season 6's excellency. Nonetheless, as Season 7 comes to a long-awaited end, I am thankful Rare fulfilled the promise of Captaincy. Better late than never. And now, the war for the Sea of Thieves begins on the 22nd of November 2022. With Athena's fortune vulnerable after the loss of Captain Pendragon, the Reaper's bones stand to strike hard with the renewed Captain Flameheart at the helm. Thanks for watching this final recap of Season 7, I hope you enjoyed it. What did you think of Season 7 as it comes to an end? Let me know down in the comments. Please make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, we've got some awesome content planned for the rest of the year. Thanks again for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.